What's your 5-year plan? If you have not been a subscriber for a while, you might have no idea where I am right now, but welcome to my loft. This is whenever you've seen the little staircase that goes up in the background. This is what is up top on top of it. But hello, my name is Anna, and a couple days ago I asked for questions. Just because it's been a second since I've done a Q&A. And I feel like these types of videos are ones where it feels like we get closer a little bit, you know? And so I've compiled together the questions that have been asked. I'm trying to include as many of them as I can. It seems like some general themes that kept coming up were like some personal, like we'll talk about me a little bit, life update, that kind of deal. Some YouTube questions, some social work related questions, and some school related questions. So I'll try to do the like chapters down in the bottom so you can go, you know, where you're interested in. We'll just start with the personal life updates one. A little warm-up question. How are you and how is this new era of post-grad? Thank you for asking. I feel like post-grad has already had a lot of different eras, even though it's been, so I graduated in May. And so it's been, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. We're in the 8th month now since I have graduated, and it's been up and down, honestly. I feel like there have been times where I've been so thrilled with where I'm at in life, feeling like real proud of myself and feeling like I'm on the right path, like that kind of deal. And there have been times where I have felt super overwhelmed, and there have been times where I felt pressure to come up with a plan for the next like few years. And there have been a lot of times that I've had to remind myself, this is a quote from Vic Blends, if you know him on like TikTok or Instagram, but in one of his videos one time he was like, you can't expect to get to Z without going through B, C, D, E, F, G, like all of this stuff. And I feel like that's something that I keep having to remind myself, is that right now, like career-wise, life-wise, all of that, I'm not going to be at my end goal. But I think that there is a part of being in post-grad where you're like, I've made it. And the fact of the matter is, like, obviously we're always in process. And so I think that's kind of been one of the harder things for me, is just reminding myself like I'm still in the process. I do think the past couple months have been tougher post-grad. And a lot of that has been due to job dissatisfaction, unsatisfaction, lack of satisfaction, which I will speak more freely about probably in coming weeks. So long story short, I'm doing okay, ups and downs. But I do think the past couple of weeks have been more of a down than an up. But I'm working on it, and I'm trying to take steps to, you know, change to get back on the right trajectory and all of that. Would you recommend living in Atlanta? Why or why not? I feel like this has been a really great city for me. I think at first it felt kind of daunting because it is a big city and it's a big metro area, but I've gotten to know the different neighborhoods very well in the past couple of years. I have worked in like very different places than I live, and so I feel like with that I get to see a whole lot of the city, even just with like driving by and stopping different places. Where I live definitely doesn't feel like the city, despite being very close to like the, you know, true heart of the city. Atlanta is super rich with culture. I did back in last spring a couple like little Atlanta Diaries videos where I was going around and trying new things in Atlanta, and I think those are fun and you can kind of get to see a little bit of like what the city has to offer. But I do really enjoy living here. The prices are crazy as far as rent goes and everything like that, and it definitely is not like a walkable city. You definitely need your car. I also feel like I've gotten to know Atlanta pretty deeply, just like based on where I work and who I work with, because a lot of the boys that I work with are like born and raised ATLians, and I feel like I get to see a different side of it than I necessarily would have if it was just like, oh, my post-grad city. Like I feel like I'm deep within Atlanta, and I love being deep within Atlanta. Next vacation plans are maybe a little bit up in the air. I do have a trip planned, but it may have to be rescheduled, and that's like based on something that may or may not be happening in the next couple of weeks, so we're just really gonna have to see. But my current next vacation plans are through EF Ultimate Breaks, who, you know, is always linked down in the description if you want $100 off a trip for you. But I am planning to go to Colombia with them. I forget all of the cities that we would go to, but it's quite a few different ones, and it's like a little bit TBD, but like it is scheduled, so we'll see. What's your 5-year plan? Well, I can tell you, whenever I graduated in May, and I have the whole video that talked about it, I had the plan of like I was going to do the job I'm currently at for a year. I was going to be actively pursuing my clinical license. It was very up in the air of how long I will live in Atlanta for circumstances that like aren't really under my control, and it's kind of just a waiting game to see. I do think I don't think I've ever planned 5 years in advance, but my like upcoming plan has changed a little bit, just in that I could see myself leaving my current job before I necessarily thought that I was going to, and also maybe in Atlanta longer than I had before thought that I was going to be. I think the other thing that's changed there is that I don't feel this great pressure right now to get my clinical license. At first I was thinking like, okay, as soon as I'm able to, I will, and now I'm not necessarily feeling that. I feel like since like being in the profession and everything, sure, it's an end goal, like eventually I'll get my clinical license, but I also just keep reminding myself like I'm young and I enjoy doing work that doesn't require a clinical license, and so I kind of feel satisfied with where I'm at. But we'll kind of see going into the future. I really don't know what between now and like May, June will look like. There's a couple different paths that I could be going on there, and one of those is staying exactly like where I am doing what I'm doing, and a lot of it is up in the air. But I do think next, like I keep saying next year because I keep thinking like in school years, but maybe like starting this summer, if not August, I do plan on applying to different jobs. Still don't know exactly where I'll be, so that's why that plan is so like up in the air as well. But I want to be applying for school jobs, and I also have recently become kind of more curious in applying for social work jobs at hospitals, which I never necessarily saw myself in, but I don't know, I feel open, and I feel like I don't want to be locked down, and I feel ready for change. What is your ideal living situation? Decor, furniture, home style, people, place, etc. So if you don't know, right now I live with Zach, and we also have another roommate, and since this is like first apartment out of post-grad, like we really didn't focus on decorating. Like this definitely isn't my aesthetically most ideal apartment ever, which sometimes I get like sometimes I get like, oh, I just want to have like a cozy space that feels like home, and I'm planning that whatever next apartment we move into, I'm really going to put effort in to make it look like I want it to. I don't really know how to describe what I like, so I'll like insert a couple like pictures I find on Pinterest of a specific style that I like. I do think for the next place that we live, because I don't believe we won't be re-signing here, at least that's the current plan, I guess, I never know, I want it to be smaller, because honestly, like I get this is like a privileged thing to complain about, this apartment is too big. Just like in square footage wise, it's like 1,500 square feet for 3 people, and it's like the living room and the kitchen are just so big that everything's so spread out, and there's a lot of space that we don't use, like for example this whole loft. And so I feel like I would so much rather be able to like pour love into the little details of a place that is like a more manageable size for being an apartment than to be like all spread out like this one is. I just want to be cozy. I prefer coziness. How is the restorative justice program going? Not much update since I finished my training, because a lot of it, so like it itself is just now starting too, so they like are training the volunteers, but like the program is not an already existing program, and so it's kind of slow going with like getting referrals and working with the DA's office and stuff like that. So I haven't done anything further for it since the original trainings. How do you prioritize self-care daily? I don't always, but I think one of the biggest things for me is trying not to put pressure on myself. I think the most daily type of self-care that I do is like within my own head. If I notice myself setting an expectation that doesn't need to be there, if I notice myself critiquing myself, if I notice that I just need either like a day to do nothing or a day to be super productive or something like that, trying to listen to myself there, because definitely like the fun activities that can be involved in self-care don't happen daily, but trying to have the mindset of like, okay, how can I be nice to myself today, even if it's not like a typical self-care thing. I think that's what I do daily, is I try to be nice to myself. I try to be kind to myself, and I try to call myself out when I'm not. I have an article that'll be coming out kind of soon on socialworkdegrees.org about self-care that I feel real proud of, and so once it gets published and like run through their editors and everything, which it'll take a little bit to get there because I just submitted it, that's the one I submitted like at the beginning of December, I'll definitely share it on here because it says a lot and goes through a lot of different plans that I do for self-care. Moving into YouTube, anything exciting coming up for YouTube? So obviously kind of with all of the like unknown future that I was talking about with plans and everything, I always feel like that'll definitely be documented on YouTube through vlogs and everything. So like if I do end up going to a new job, and when we do end up moving, like that kind of stuff will be on the channel, and so that could be something to look forward to, even though I don't know exactly what is going to happen when at this point. Also, I figure I might as well just tell you this now. It's not like a big announcement or anything because it won't change this channel, but I did start a bookstagram and a booktube, like I said I was thinking about doing. So I'll link them both down in the description. You can totally choose whether or not you want to follow or subscribe or not. And really the reason why is just because it is a hobby that I really enjoy talking about, but with this channel that we're on right now, it's just like a different channel. And so I always felt like kind of hindered whenever I would start to talk about books, because it's like, I know some people enjoy the book talk, but also that's not necessarily like why people were on this channel. And so I figured I would just start one totally dedicated to books. I don't know if uploads are going to be super regular because this one's still going to be like priority, but that one just kind of feels fun, and getting to like make some new content and stuff that just kind of ignites a little spark inside me. And so I'm excited about the booktube, and the bookstagram's already been a little bit active and everything. I've already filmed a couple videos for the booktube that are not done being edited yet, so that is also something exciting. Tips for growing your YouTube channel. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask, just because I definitely have been like a slow and steady kind of girl, but also I really enjoy that I've been slow and steady kind of growth, because then I feel like I get to know like the people who comment more or DM or anything like that, because it's not like, oh, 0 to 50,000 overnight. I think that starts to feel a lot less genuine of an experience, and not anything bad. Like if that does happen to someone, that's awesome, but I just mean I feel like I have been becoming better as my channel has been growing, because I've gotten like the time to do that. And so, but the tips that I would have is posting consistently, whether that's once a week, twice a week. I would say strive for once a week, but obviously it can't always be that. Interacting with the people who watch your videos, because obviously your channel is not going to go anywhere if they're not there. And so just kind of getting to know like who does like watching your videos. And then I also think finding something that makes you stick out a little bit from other people who have channels. Obviously for me, that is kind of social work a little bit, just in that that's not a journey or a facet that is always talked about on other people's channels. So while I do lifestyle type things and vlogs and weekly vlogs and all of that, there also is like that other little pillar that people find me through social work. And I think that has really been helpful to kind of have just like something that makes you different. It doesn't have to be your profession, it doesn't have to be what you're studying, just something that makes you different, so that people will be drawn specifically to you instead of just like any other content creator. What video editor do you use? Final Cut Pro, but I only started using Final Cut Pro in September of this year. Before that, it was strictly iMovie. There are a couple of things that are more convenient in Final Cut Pro, but I don't feel like there's too much of a difference between Final Cut Pro and iMovie, at least maybe that you've noticed in my videos or anything like that. Moving into the social work questions, I'm gonna ask, is the LMSW like getting your a.bea.s? And I had to look this up because what's so confusing with social work is the fact that it's so many different acronyms, state to state, like each state is so different. And so if I am correct that a.bea.s, it looks like is in Wisconsin, and it's the master level license. So yes, I do believe that it's the same. The license that I have is just the master level license, the one that only requires you to get a master's degree. There's no extra like clinical hours I had to get, no extra supervision hours that I had to get. It required the master's degree, taking the exam, and like applying and that kind of stuff. So I believe that yes. Yeah, that's something that I know the NASW has been working on for a little bit, is more like state to state collaboration, and what's the word whenever stuff is like kind of the same, regulation, as maybe not regulation, I don't know, just making licenses be less confusing state to state. I know they've been working on that. Someone asked, what drove you to go into community health versus private mental health? Can you speak on the pros and cons you weighed? Honestly, with my current position, what drove me most to it was the fact that I had done my internship there, and I knew that there was a job opportunity for me here, and I really enjoyed the clients that I worked with. So that was kind of how I fell into this job. It was less mindful, I think, than specifically deciding exactly which area of social work I wanted to be in. I wanted to be able to get experience post-grad, and am working on doing that now. I honestly don't know too much about private mental health. I don't know at this point if I ever want to be like full psychotherapist just sitting in an office. Maybe I'll grow up and change my mind, but right now I kind of like that in my job I get to do mental health and I get to do counseling, but there also is like a lot of other stuff that goes into it as well. So that's kind of how I landed in this job. There wasn't too much thought that went into it. Could you speak to differences between what you do as a licensed social worker and LCSW in terms of differences in graduation requirements, added benefits, pathways afforded, stuff like that, and some of the resources you used when preparing for your state licensure exam that you found to be the most helpful? So as far as what I can do differently than what a clinical social worker can do, I'm gonna link a licensing video that I made because it goes a lot more in depth there, but just in the spirit of answering the question. Mine, like I kind of just mentioned, required a master's degree, passing the exam, that was pretty much it. Like paperwork and a fee, but like that was pretty much it. Clinical licenses are the ones that are a step above that and usually require a certain set of hours that you've worked, a certain set of supervision hours. Sometimes they require continuing education units. That super depends state to state, but with my current licensure level, I couldn't do clinical therapy without being supervised by someone who does have a higher license than me. Supervised doesn't necessarily mean they're sitting in the room with me, but it means they're like checking in on what I'm doing, treatment planning, like that kind of thing, checking in on that. I couldn't do that by myself. Like I could not right now open a private practice and just like do therapy by myself. I would need someone who is higher certified than me to be looking over, supervising, all of that. Sometimes it does vary state to state, even with what the differences are between these licenses. For example, in Georgia, LCSWs can give diagnoses, whereas I'm not diagnosing anyone with this license. LCSWs can 1013 people, which is called so many different things in different states too. I feel like so many different states, but involuntary commitment, an LCSW could authorize that. I cannot authorize that. Not that I would always want to, but that's a different ethical issue. What were the other questions? Oh, so the exam, I made a vlog about that too, so I can refer you to that one, but I used the APGAR study guide and I used a couple YouTube channels that I know I would have talked about in that video, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Agents of Change was one, and then I think Savvy Social Worker was another YouTube channel that I used. But definitely watch that video because I would have said a lot more helpful things in that one. Also, as someone currently in the process of applying to grad school in the field, are there any helpful tips / tricks to be aware of? What general expectations can I expect from my program? What kinds of things do prospective grad programs like to hear about? And in the case of social work, what is the official body of accreditation to look for at the university program? There are way too many. Look for CSWE, the Council of Social Work Education. That's the most like widely acknowledged one, and whenever you're looking to be licensed, that's who they require to, is a CSWE accredited a program, which most of them are, but it'll say it like somewhere on the website that they are. I think a lot of grad programs are what you make of them, and I say that in a way of lowering the pressure on you to pick the perfect one. Obviously, lots of times finances will play a huge part into it, and I think that's okay to let them play a huge part into it, because with accredited programs, you are going to get similar curriculum. Like there are certain requirements of different classes they have to offer and stuff like that. So I think one of the biggest tips and tricks to maybe look for is looking at the field department, looking at the process that they go through to secure you a field placement, because that honestly is, I feel like, is the most important part of grad school. Both of my social work schools that I've gone to, like for undergrad and then for grad school, did the entire process themselves basically. Like we had an interview where we talked about kind of like what I was looking for, but then the staff at the school went out and actually like talked to and secured the internship for me, and then came back and was like, you're placed here. I really liked that. I know that some schools place more responsibility on the student to go like find their own internship and get it approved or whatever it may be. That just might be something to look into as far as like personal preference goes. I think when you're looking at grad schools, if you find any like online communities, whether it's a Facebook group or something like that, of students at that school, definitely take it with a grain of salt, because people are much more likely to talk about and post negative, bad experiences than they are neutral or positive experiences. And that was something that, like, after picking my school, I joined the Facebook group, and so many people were saying such awful things about the school that I got really freaked out of like, I picked the wrong school. But then I had a great experience with like few to none problems. And so I think you'll be okay no matter what you pick. And I would also recommend looking at the social work playlist on my channel, because I do have a couple videos that go like more into depth about like application process and different things you can talk about and different ways you can relate experiences to make them look good to the grad school committee or stuff like that. Same thing with general expectations to expect. I'm going to refer you to this video. I'll put it on the screen. Someone asked, what BSW jobs are there? Most job openings I see require at least an MSW. This is something that's going to change area to area a whole lot. I even know, like, when I went to undergrad in Alabama, it seemed like there were a lot more options for BSWs than whenever now I'm here in Georgia. Even if you're not job searching right now, to just be on job sites to kind of start getting an idea of some different requirements of different jobs. If your search is solely like the phrase social worker, that also could play into it. There are a few resources online or on Instagram that give good keywords to search for when you're looking for social work jobs that might not like specifically call themselves social workers. So you can always look at case manager, caseworker, basically anything at a nonprofit, project manager, sometimes the research positions. Look up advocate. And I do feel that sometimes when jobs require a BSW instead of an MSW, it may not be specifically a Bachelor of Social Work that they require. It might be like a bachelor's degree in social work, psychology, counseling, or a related field or something like that. So just making sure whenever you search that maybe those could come up as well. It does feel like there are fewer, but I believe in you. You can do it. Okay, moving into school type questions. Even though I'm post-grad, still got some answers. How did you get through senioritis? I do not know, to be honest. I do not know, but I felt it towards the end. I definitely felt it towards the end. I think a big thing for me, and you would have seen this a little bit on my channel if you were following last spring, is I started just trying to do like fun things that were totally outside of school. And that definitely meant that I was spending less time on school, which I didn't suffer too much about. But I mean, when you're at the end of your degree program, like when you're applying to jobs, no one's gonna care if you have a 4.0 or not. It's just if you get the degree. So don't put your degree in jeopardy, but also if you can, just start living your life outside of school. I found that that really helped, because then it was like, well, it was a double-edged sword, because sometimes then it was like, okay, well, I'm not spending every day doing school, so whenever I sit down on this Thursday, it's going to be totally school-y. But then also sometimes it's like, well, I took a break, and so I don't want to have to sit down and do schoolwork. But I do think living outside of school does help with those feelings, because I think it helps with burnt out type feelings of senioritis, where when your life is bigger than school, and school doesn't feel just like so icky, ugly, icky. But also the fact that time has never stopped, time keeps going, and with that, your end date is going to come. Even if it feels like it's super far away, it's going to come. What were your favorite and least favorite classes during your social work undergrad? Favorite, my intro to social work class, because it was where I feel like I had the biggest learning curve, because I didn't really know anything really about social work whenever I became a social work major. It was a super small class. There were 6 of us, and super great professor, and she brought in a lot of guest speakers from all different areas of the field of social work, and I still like think back to that class so often. That was in freshman year. That was a favorite class. Another one of my favorite classes, I took a psychopathology class, which was really interesting and a little bit rare to be an undergrad, but that one was very interesting. Maybe this isn't fair to the classes because I got hit with the March 2020 madness, you know, during COVID and everything, and online classes. But basically, I graduated a year early. I came in with some AP credits, but also summer of 2020, I took 17 credit hours. Don't do that. Don't take 17 credit hours over a summer, but it was summer 2020, so I wasn't doing anything else. I had an awful class experience with a not wonderful professor and class material that I felt like was not beneficial to me. It was my communities class, and this is not saying that all communities classes are bad, just my experience was really bad, and my experience with my professor was really bad. Most of my experiences through my social work undergrad were great, wonderful, loved them, but that class, I can't even remember the specifics, to be honest. Do you think it matters what school someone got their degree at? I don't. I really don't. Now, talking like social work, accreditation does matter a bit, because then it like universalizes. I think that's the word I was trying to come up with earlier. The like education that someone gets, like of the different topics and everything like that. But as far as like quality wise goes, I definitely don't think so. I can even speak on my undergrad experiences, because part of me, like I was a really great student in high school, and I went to the University of Alabama, and there was a part of me at that time that fed into like the negative thoughts about the University of Alabama, or even just the state of Alabama. Like I fed into the stigmas of it and was thinking like, can't I go somewhere that's like going to fulfill my potential more, or like even be more impressive to people when I tell them about it. And academically, I had a great time at the University of Alabama, and I felt really prepared and had a really great experience, specifically with the School of Social Work, because that's who I was in, even though the University of Alabama isn't like, oh wow, what a great academic school. That being said, then for my master's program, I went to Fordham, which is not super widely known in the areas that I grew up in. Like maybe on the East Coast it's more known, but it is a private institution. It was more expensive. I think it was more like higher regards or something like that, and I didn't notice a difference in my quality of education from them than I did from Alabama. And I know several people who have gone to like a wide range of different schools and schools of social work specifically, and I think the school that you go to matters in the sense of if it's going to be a good fit for you, and like how much opportunity it gives you, and how much like you can make the most of it, and if you know their teaching style is a good match for your learning style, like that kind of thing, much more so than like do you deserve a job or not because you went to this school instead of this school. I think that's a dividing line that people draw and try to hold on to hold on to some sort of prestige when it's unnecessary in my opinion. How did you balance school and YouTube, and how do you balance work and YouTube? This opinion definitely has a cutoff, but I do think that the more that I do, the more that I can do. Like I said, that has a cutoff. Doesn't always happen like that. I feel like for me, I've just made it be not a non-negotiable, because that doesn't sound good, but kind of like it's a fun activity for me. Like editing is a fun activity for me, filming is a fun activity for me. It's not my job. I'm never planning on making YouTube my actual like job. That's not for me. But I think also with that, then it's not like, oh, I'm just trying to like make as much money as I can, and so it always has to be grind. Like it's fun. And so like whenever I get home from work, I don't hate the fact that like, oh, sometimes I'm just gonna sit here and edit a YouTube video. Sometimes I want to a little bit less, and so then usually on those nights that I don't. But I think that helps me still prioritize it, just in the fact that it's like, this is fun, this is something I enjoy, so I don't hate doing it, so then it helps it get done. It was harder during school, and only one single time did I have a late upload, which I felt really proud of, but also I kind of adjusted it with like my current life situations, and that I was posting once a week while I was in school, like strictly once a week. And then now I post more like twice a week because I'm working part-time, even though it's almost full-time, but still technically part-time. And I'm posting twice a week. And now apparently I'm getting a second channel too. Realistically, something that I think helps is trying to have videos like be a week ahead or something like that. Like just giving yourself some wiggle room, so that if there is a busier week that makes it harder to edit or something like that, you have those wiggle days that you don't have to be like, okay, I have to stay up late tonight in order to edit this and finish this so it can be uploaded by tomorrow. I don't suggest doing that, but try and have a wee little bit of wiggle room. All of that being said, it was a lot being said. If you missed getting to ask a question, follow me on Instagram so you can see next time. Or turn on post notifications so that you can know whenever I put in the community tab. But also feel free to drop any kind of comment you'd like, whether that's a follow-up or anything like that. And I'll do my best to type up a good answer, make it as quality as if I were here talking to you right now. I really do love these videos because I feel like they're very real and raw. Not that any of my videos aren't. I feel like you get the real me in all my videos, but you know, it's different just sitting down and having a little chit chat. I appreciate you. I'm so glad you're here. I know I say that all the time, but like from the bottom of my heart, the very bottom of it, I feel so thankful for each and every one of you, and I'll see you next time.